So hi. So first, thank you so much for doing this very, I think, important initiative, Ahmed. It's really critical that we address these things kind of heads on. What I wanted to bring up is that I've talked over the years, and I've been increasingly more to authors who are really frustrated because, as you know, it's very difficult to publish in good journals. So you try one, and then sometimes you get two good reviews, one bad review, and then in the end it doesn't get there. So you have to go to the other one. So people who really want to publish in good journals, they end up submitting sometimes the same material to multiple journals. And one person, I mean, more than one person actually said to me recently, said, I cannot believe in this age of AI and everything so sophisticated. We have to go and reformat everything and do other checklists and do everything from scratch as you go from one journal to another, particularly when you change publishers. But even within the same publisher, depends if it's a society journal one, the other one is not, they can be completely different. So I think that any effort to make things more author-friendly and standardized so that if you checked, if you adhere to the checklist for one submission, you could, if the journal doesn't get there, you just go to the other one and you can resubmit more easily. But I think if we could try to think of a universal, not universal, but acceptance by multiple journals of the same parameters, it would make authors' life much easier. And people are very unhappy out there by having to, to do this repeatedly.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that is definitely a really major issue, and one of the reasons that we are around the table here, just discussing how we might be able to collaborate and how different journals would be able to collaborate together. So that is definitely going to be some of the discussion that we are going to have. I can see Warren here. Warren, do you want to share your kind of thoughts?
Yeah, thanks very much, Hamid. I'd just like to make one point, and we heard a little bit about this from some of the others, is that when we institute a checklist, if we institute a checklist, collecting data on the effectiveness of the checklist. Are people, what impact does it have on submissions? Are authors following it if it's recommended rather than required? Are there actual changes that are occurring in reporting of methods? This is an experiment, and if we don't collect data, we're not going to learn anything from conducting the experiment.
Yep. That is definitely another kind of level of challenge. And I can see Randolph here. Randolph, do you want to say hello and share your thoughts?
Yeah, hi, Randy Nudo. Actually, the AI tools I think can be potentially very effective, and as we increase our requirements for guidelines, it also increases the workload on us as editors to check for that not only that the checklist has been included and adhered to, but verifying that the information in that checklist is not only in the manuscript, but actually accurate. For example, the pre-registration dates of clinical trials. So that's one area that, even with examining the manuscript intensively, we still have many cases where, in fact, the NIH clinical trial registry shows that the trial is retrospectively registered. So we need those tools. I was wondering if there was anyone representing the Frontiers journals, because I know that they have been experimenting with a system, and Martin, maybe you know more about this era to scan using AI tools, and how far has their system developed?
Do we have anybody from Frontiers here in the room who wants to kind of share? And or Martin, I mean, if you want to kind of share.
Yeah, I just want to respond briefly. Yeah, so I don't have contact with the Frontiers people. We're JAMA Psychiatry, and JAMA family in general is still negotiating with the large language model folks the proprietary issues. So we haven't actually moved forward as a system, as a family of journals. And I think that is for maybe some other journals also still a concern. So unfortunately, I don't know exactly the details of what the Frontiers journals have done.
Yeah, the Committee on Publication Ethics just this past week had a session on AI tools, and there was a representative that presented, and it may be worthwhile bringing that perspective to the group.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Hamid, if you, I can send you the name of the person that presented at that COPE webinar if that's helpful.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We definitely would love to kind of make the communications and putting that as a part of the consensus statement that we are putting together. So I'm not going to put people on the spot, but I mean, I'm not sure if Tom Costin, if you are interested, Tom, to share anything about the kind of the checklist and the discussions that we have.
I mean, I'm happy to talk. The thing that I remember most vividly as an author is having a study that involved a clinical trial with neuroimaging and genetics in it, and having checklists up the checklists in terms of things that you had to satisfy, some of which were mutually contradictory in terms of if you satisfied one, you couldn't satisfy the other one. The thought of having that imposed on authors, that increasingly we want to cross disciplines when we're doing these things. I think of it particularly with genetics and neuroimaging. And are we going to try to coordinate these checklists with all the other checklists you have to do, particularly for like clinical trials, and or if you do anything resembling a review or an epidemiological study? I mean, I'm sure most of you have probably had some not so generous experiences, working with these checklists that are asking for things. I mean, we have only heard about the statistical ones, which can be downright confounding, but the other ones are, the methodologies are, you might say, wildly different sometimes, and don't fit together. So I'm curious, where's the master checklist organization that's looking across these and thinking, cross-disciplinary wise? I mean, we're just psychiatry, never mind if you start bringing in some other biomarkers that involve laboratory medicine and all these other kinds of things, but they do also have their own checklists that are painful. So I'd like to not be involved with something that makes life more painful for authors. They're already getting the pain of having to pay to get their papers published, which has been a huge burden for the junior investigators. I realize there's probably no junior investigators sitting on this group. We all just are loaded with money instead and can afford the $5,000 or whatever. But there are some real issues that are going on that I'm afraid, as we put in more and more restrictions like this, I mean, 2 years from now, the NIH has got the ultimate restriction, which is everything has to be open access. Okay, how are you supposed to do that? So I hate to be a naysayer in some of this, but I think I was joined by at least one other editor who said, it's nice, but how closed are we as opposed to what the real world is like? And I think it was Simon who was the one who was saying, that you're trying to get people to commit to this, and if we then have AI checking on it and sending them back a message in chatbot that says, you screwed up, you didn't do this, that, and the other thing, I can imagine how welcome that will be to authors. So yeah, there's my 2 cents worth of stuff.
Absolutely, and there are definitely kind of those challenges, and the idea of having checklists talking to each other and not overlapping with each other or being contradictory to each other, and having a platform that basically bringing those checklists together and just making sure that they are going to follow the same sort of quality standards and not just enhancing what people, or kind of increasing what people are going to do in a kind of in an irrational way. So there are definitely discussions around that. Simon, do you want to share your kind of comments?
Yeah, just 2 quick thoughts. In some way, we are all supposed to be interdisciplinary. But if you look at checklists, then this quickly brings up the question of granularity. Like, there will be no checklist for neuroscience. There will be not one for neuroimaging. There will be some for magnetic resonance spectroscopy studies in non-clinical populations. Or is that already too detailed? So what's the right level where a checklist captures the relevant aspects of that field without having unnecessary items, without missing some things. And I would actually extend the previous comment, particularly in this direction. We need to think about the right granularity in terms of the fields that a checklist is developing for. And in some way, clinical trials always give a wrong impression, because that's actually a very narrow field in a way, right? So checklists there could be quite well defined, whereas in basic studies, it's often more complicated. The other point I would like to make is that openness definitely beats transparency, in particular when it comes to methods papers, but basically all papers. If you have all data and scripts available, you basically need no reporting, because it's all in the data. If you have good data with a clear provenance, then yeah, you don't need any checklists. You can all look it up directly in the actual work, which I think is where we ultimately would want to go to. But that's a very long road. And also would like to note, I unfortunately have to leave at 45. Thanks.